My friend Victor Greco died in February. I was away in Italy and didn't find out until I got back in early March, about 2 weeks after Victor died. Victor was 50 years old. He had always seemed the embodiment of strength, but he had been homeless for 10 years. The last time I saw Victor was in late October. I went and found him in Tompkins Square Park. Victor liked to sit in Tompkins Square in the afternoons. He loved it there, and also it was convenient because they have bathrooms there that tend to stay open until pretty late in the evening. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny October afternoon. I found Victor sitting on a bench. I sat by Victor for a long time, and he told me the plots of old movies he loved. Hearing Victor tell the story of a movie was like seeing the movie. He used to love to tell the story of King Kong. He told me that movie lots of times. I think Victor really identified with King Kong. Victor always reminded me of Popeye the Sailor Man. Sometimes I would tell Victor that, and I think that really made Victor happy. Victor once gave me 2 cans of Popeye the Sailor Man spinach. I kept them when I moved. I still have them on the top shelf of my kitchen cabinet. Victor really was like Popeye. He wasn't tall. He was around 5'7", I think, but he had a well-muscled physique, especially his chest and arms, and he was heroic, like Popeye. He used to love to make me feel his biceps and tell him how strong he felt. And he had a deep masculine voice, tough and gravelly, just like Popeye's. And in winter he liked to grow a beard. He had a beautiful, thick, black beard. Victor used to live in the rooming house right next to mine. For 34 years, I lived in an old rooming house on East 10th Street, and for the last 16 years I lived there, I was the sole occupant, the last one living there. I had the whole place to myself, which was a pretty luxurious situation. I think I first became aware of Victor around the time my sister Helen left to marry Harvey. I was 39 years old. Helen and I had lived together all our lives. And not long after Helen left, Donald Milburn, the sole other occupant of my rooming house, was carried off to a nursing home in the Bronx, and I was left alone there in the house on 10th Street. Victor Greco rented a small room on the top floor with a big, beautiful window. If I was 39 when we met, then Victor must have been 28. He was 11 years younger than me. At that time, Victor was working as a short order cook at the 2nd Avenue Deli, right down the block on the corner of 10th and 2nd Avenue. Sometimes in the evening, when he got out of work, Victor would come hang out with me on my front stoop if I was sitting out there. He was very respectful, though, and would not bother me if he felt that I wanted to be alone. Victor always had a small stash bottle of vodka in his pocket, and I never went anywhere without a stash bottle of red wine, so sometimes we would sit and drink together. Victor was very sexy. He loved hookers. I don't know if Victor ever had a serious romance with a woman, but he had a very romantic relationship with several of the hookers. Sometimes he would describe to me the wild nights they would have together, snorting cocaine. He told me several times how once he had been hanging out on his front stoop in running shorts, feeling wildly horny, and this beautiful hooker came by and reached out and took hold of him by his erect manhood and led him by his manhood up the stairs to his room. He loved to tell me that story. A few years after I met Victor, he got fired from his job at the 2nd Avenue Deli. I don't know why he was fired. Victor never managed to find another job. I think his personality was just too strong for him to do well behind the counter of a diner. I'm sure that's why he got fired. There was always something uncanny about Victor. He used to claim to be a werewolf, and I sort of believed him. Victor loved animals. Right around the time he lost his job, he got a dog, a big, beautiful German Shepherd, whom he named Bull. I think it was a German Shepherd. That's a police dog, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And he named his dog Bull. Victor loved Bull, and Bull loved Victor. Bull was a very sexy and passionate dog. One night, I visited Victor in his room. When I went out into the hall to pee, Bull came with me into the bathroom. I watched as he stood on his hind legs at the sink. With both his front paws, Bull turned on the cold water faucet until the water was going full blast, and then he drank from the faucet. When I told Victor that, Victor laughed and said Bull still hadn't learned to turn the water off again when he finished drinking. He sounded very proud of Bull. Bull was a brilliant dog. I'll always remember one dawn when Victor and I had stayed up all night together. We had gone up to his room and then up onto the roof. Victor stood there on the roof, gazing triumphantly out into the rising sun. I was very drunk. I sat there on the roof at Victor's feet, gazing up at him and thinking how heroic and handsome he was, and longing for him so deeply he could never have known. I guess after Victor lost his job, he got quickly way behind in his rent, and then his building was sold and the new landlord wanted everybody out. The landlord agreed to waive Victor's back rent and give him some paltry sum like $4,000 if he would agree to give up his room. And Victor agreed to leave. Then Victor began squatting in the basement of his building. But after about a year, the landlord found out about that, and Victor became homeless. When that happened, Victor gave Bull away. He gave him to a man he knew who had a firm upstate and promised to take good care of Bull. I know it was a terrible loss for Victor to give Bull away. I remember one Thanksgiving, I went down the block to the 10th Street Block Association's Thanksgiving dinner in the parish hall of St. Mark's Church. Victor was there carving the turkeys. As a chef, he was an expert carver of fowl. When I sat down with my plate to eat, Victor came and sat beside me. I was quite stoned. I had smoked some pot to give myself courage to attend this function in a church hall. I remember I sat there admiring the beautiful masculine form of Victor's bald head. And I said something that must have come out sounding so vacuous. I said to Victor, "You have a beautiful head." Victor looked me straight in the eye. He waited a second and then said boldly, "Which one?" All I could do in reply was laugh. It probably came out like some cracked, hysterical giggle. My heart was aflutter and I felt faint. It certainly was one of the sexiest things anyone has ever said to me. It seemed to promise some half-dreamt of intimacy to come. Somehow, years went by. Victor used to write notes and letters and stories for me, and he would drop them through the mail slot of my front door. He wrote on whatever kind of paper he could find, pieces of the Village Voice, old advertisements, and pieces of cardboard. I have a whole big box full of things Victor wrote for me. I brought a drawing of Victor's with me tonight, which I'd like to show you. It's a self-portrait. That's Victor breaking free from his chains like Hercules. Victor wrote a lot about our adventures together on an intergalactic whaling ship, sailing through the stars. We would do battle with giant interstellar squid, and the interstellar whales would protect us. Victor and I were both part of the crew, as was Barbara, this fun lady who lived across the street, who was also a friend of Victor's. Victor used to meet Barbara every morning at dawn when she came out to walk her dog, Candle. Once Victor wrote me a poem, a bilingual poem in French and English. The French was Victor's French. La lune est brille, le ciel est noir. What is that creature at your door? La lune est brille was Victor's way of saying the moon is shining. and the two O's in door were drawn like a pair of peering eyes. It truly was like a creature at my door. I loved that poem. Victor truly was that creature at my door. Victor used to sleep by my front door sometimes if it wasn't too cold. My front door was set into a deep lintel of stone. Victor would sleep there, and I would just open the left-hand leaf of my double front door and step over him quietly and slip in and out of the house. It made me feel protected to have Victor sleeping there. And then I noticed a little triangular hollow dug into the stone by the base of my front door, there where the front door was set into the stone lintel. Victor had begun to dig into the stone, bit by bit carving out a niche there, a little triangular hollow by the base of my front door. Over the years, this little niche gradually got bigger, deeper. It never got big enough or deep enough to worry me. Eventually, it got deep enough that Victor might have fit his fist there. It was his little secret cave by my front door. Sometimes, before I left 10th Street, Victor would make me let him inside. I would let Victor into my downstairs hall, and behind the locked front door, we would kiss. And Victor would say romantic things to me and force me onto the floor at his feet. And yes, he had a beautiful head. Both his heads were beautiful. The last time I saw Victor in Tompkins Square, he told me he was staying in his friend Ido's van down on Delancey Street below the bridge, and I promised him that I would visit him there some night. But then I ran out of time before I had to leave, and it got so cold. Ido found Victor in the van. Barbara told me the coroner said he died of natural causes. I guess it had gotten very cold. I failed Victor, and there's no excuse. Sometimes I think, why didn't I just let Victor live with me? Not just since his death. I've asked myself that a lot over the years, though Victor never seemed to expect it. I guess I always felt so vulnerable about my living situation and didn't want to lose my house. Plus, Victor's personality was so strong, and I'm so shy. I don't know if I could live with someone. I've always been in love with solitude somehow. I don't know why. When I think of Victor, I like to think of the days on 10th Street when Victor would leave me stories and poems and writings. Almost every day I would find some writing by Victor dropped through the mail slot of my front door. I like to think of Victor sleeping there with his fist curled up inside the little cave he carved for himself in the stone. So to Victor.
Yeah, baby.